Hey guys, and welcome to the Rants channel, your home for NFL projections, predictions, and of course, your periodic rant. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the top wide receiver for every team. I'm going to be ranking them in a tier format. Now, I got a request to do this in one of my other videos, and I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to talk about the top receiver on every team. I'm going to go into a little bit about why they rank where they do. But before I do that, if you're new to the channel, please make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. So before I start, I'm going to just clear something up real quick. If your team's top receiver is in the F tier, I'm not dogging on your team. It's just compared to other wide receivers, that's where they're going to fare. So please, don't take this the wrong way if your team ends up there. Please don't do it, because I really try to be impartial with all these teams. I really do. So we're going to start with Tennessee, and the top wide receiver is arguably, it's a toss-up between A.J. Brown and now Julio Jones, of course, has entered the party. Either way, the Titans are an easy A tier. Both of these wide receivers are going to have already, well, Julio Jones already is having a great career. A.J. Brown is on his way to doing so. Great things in mind for both of these teams. Now, Miami is next, and they have a lot of answers here. Devontae Parker is undoubtedly the top guy before 2021. Now you could argue Will Fuller could be a potential challenger to him, or Jalen Waddle could potentially overtake. Either way, I'm going to put Miami's receiver core, because it's hard to pick one. I'll put them at about a B tier. Obviously not nearly as good as A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, but still not totally unreliable. It all really depends on how Tua throws and how he does, but I think they're probably around the B tier. Next is Cleveland. And again, you could argue it's Odell Beckham. You could argue it's Jarvis Landry. Either one has a case. And both of these guys, I think, would make a really good case in the high B tier, I'd say, right at the top of the B tier. I think Odell took a little bit of a step back, so I'd lean more towards Jarvis Landry, in my opinion. But I think he's right around the B tier. That's where I have him at. Jacksonville's receiver core. DJ Chark is probably an easy pick for me as the top receiver here. Jacksonville, I'm probably going to put in the D tier. Is Chark a good receiver? Yeah, sure. But is he as good as Jarvis Landry or an A.J. Brown or Julio Jones? No. But he's not the worst top receiver on this list. He's not the worst of the best. Detroit, at this point, their top receiver was Kenny Golladay, but now he is gone, and I'm not sure who it is. And the fact that I can't even think of who it is, the Lions are an easy F tier. I'm not sure if it's Brashad Perriman, if it's Tyrell Williams, or if it's going to be the rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown. But either way, not even close to comparing to what's on this list. Minnesota's next, their division rival. Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. They both remind me of Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, but unlike what's there, I'm actually going to put the Vikings in the lower end of the A tier, against my better judgment, because I don't like putting people in there after, especially if they're going into their second year. But Adam Thielen is also a very reliable wide receiver, and I think he is arguably the top receiver, but Justin Jefferson is not too far behind, and I think that it gets an honorable mention. Both Minnesota and Tennessee have two very solid answers, in my opinion, and it's hard to pick between the two, but you can, of course, make your own distinction on that. And next we have Tampa. Tampa also has two top receivers, but unlike these other two, Tampa's probably going to go in the S tier. Mike Evans has had 1,000-yard seasons every year he's been in the NFL, so that's an easy S tier wide receiver, in my opinion. Chris Godwin gets an honorable mention, but is he on the same level as Mike Evans? No, but he is a very talented receiver in his own right. Next, we have the San Francisco 49ers, and I believe their top receiver as of now, you could argue it's between Brandon Ayuk. You could argue it's between him and Deebo Samuel. Either way, San Francisco is going to be at the top of the F tier. Obviously, if we're doing a tight ends chart, they go in the S tier, no doubt. But Deebo Samuel, I think, has a high ceiling. I think Brandon Ayuk has a high ceiling, but they haven't reached it yet. And that's why they're going to be down there. Next is Atlanta. and this is an easy pick. Calvin Ridley is easily their top receiver with Julio Jones gone. And Calvin Ridley, I do like him. I think he has really had a good career so far, but much like DJ Chark, I think he's going to go in the D tier. Obviously, he's not going to be able to fill the shoes of Julio Jones nearly as well. I think he'll do okay in terms of just how he plays, but to compare the two is almost disrespectful. Next is Baltimore. Their top receiver right now, I believe, is Sammy Watkins. And you could argue that Rashad Bateman, the rookie they drafted this year, you could argue he could eventually take the place of that since Watkins is only on a one-year deal. But I think Baltimore is the first team that goes in the C tier for me. Their receiver, Watkins isn't horrible. He's probably better than Chark and Calvin Ridley, in my opinion. But I think he's just a touch under Landry, a touch under... You could argue he's almost better than Devontae Parker. But again, I'm not really sure who to pick from Miami for the top receiver yet. But I think Watkins the C tier. I think that's fair. Next we have Chicago, and I believe Chicago's top receiver is Allen Robinson. He's on the franchise tag. Allen Robinson, he was actually really good in Jacksonville, but I'm actually going to be a little harsh here and put him at the top of the D tier. He hasn't looked horrible in Chicago, but he hasn't looked nearly as good as he did in Jacksonville, so I'm going to hold him accountable for that. Next we have Cincinnati. Now Cincinnati's a bit of a trick question because I'm not really sure if it's Tyler Boyd or if it's Jamar Chase, but because my policy with rookies is don't judge them until they take a snap in the league, which Jamar Chase hasn't yet, I'm going to rate it as Tyler Boyd. And Tyler Boyd is an easy C tier. If Jamar Chase makes big strides this year, I can put him in the B tier. But I'm basing this off of Tyler Boyd, and he is still a reliable receiver. I'll put him in the C tier. Next, we have Dallas. Amari Cooper is clearly up at the top of this list, and Dallas, in my opinion, will belong in the A tier. Obviously, I have questions about Dak Prescott. I was never a fan of his, and never will be. But Amari Cooper is talented, and he still has looked talented in Dallas, so that's not a coincidence. Next is Houston. Oh, God, Houston. This team is awful. I'm a huge Deshaun Watson fan, and I despise what they've been doing to the wide receiver core in Houston. Brandon Cooks is their top guy, but Brandon Cooks is not the reliable slot receiver he once was, and I'm going to put him at the top of the F tier. I think right above the Lions and 49ers, because at least Brandon Cooks at one point was really good, and I'm sure Deshaun Watson can help him look good, but Brandon Cooks is also not as reliable as anyone else ahead of him, in my opinion. Next, we have T.Y. Hilton from the Colts. And T.Y. Hilton, honestly, you could argue that he's been taking a step back the last couple of years as of late, that he's been on the downswing. And you have other players on the team that could eventually step in that number one slot. Michael Pittman could do it. Paris Campbell could potentially become another slot guy. And they drafted a couple of rookies this past year. I'm going to be a little generous to T.Y. Hilton because he's had a quarterback carousel. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll put him in the low end of the C tier because Hilton's not horrible. He's not a bad receiver, and he has had a quarterback carousel. He hasn't had a consistent quarterback since Andrew Luck was there. But T.Y. Hilton, he hasn't nearly looked as talented as the receivers ahead of him, but he is still a threat. Next, we have the Rams, and the Los Angeles Rams as a whole in terms of offense, I'm very excited to see what they do. You could argue it's between Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, who their top receiver is. The Rams are an easy B tier. I think right in between the Browns and the Dolphins. Because their receivers, both of them are really talented. You could argue either one of them has a number one case. But I think they're more like both 1.5 receivers. But they still do play very well. Next we have the Chargers, Keenan Allen. I'm going to put Keenan Allen in the B tier right behind the Rams. Keenan Allen has been very reliable. I want to see him take more strides with Justin Herbert, but I am very excited to see how Herbert develops as a whole and what Keenan Allen can do to help him develop. Next is Kansas City, Tyreek Hill. This is an easy S tier, easily S tier, right behind Mike Evans, I think, because Tyreek Hill hasn't been putting up 1,000-yard seasons every year. But Tyreek Hill, almost spelling his name. Tyreek Hill, whether you like him off the field or you don't, he is still a very talented wide receiver, a Pro Bowler in his own right. The Saints, Michael Thomas, please do not be distracted by the quarterback issues. We're not talking about quarterbacks. I'll give him a little bit of a mention in terms of long-term development, but Michael Thomas is still an S-tier receiver. And I'd even put him above Tyreek Hill. Because Michael Thomas, I mean, his record speaks for itself. He's extremely talented. There's a reason why New Orleans wants to keep him around and pay him so much money. He's extremely talented. The Giants, Kenny Golladay. I would put Golladay in the probably low end of the A tier. I'm very surprised Detroit let him walk, especially with everything going on with Matthew Stafford, everything else. I'm really surprised Detroit didn't make more of an effort to keep him around, but it is what it is. Golladay, I think, with Daniel Jones, I have questions as to what his numbers will be this year, because obviously Daniel Jones is a step back from Stafford, but Kenny Golladay is still a very good receiver. Next up, Philadelphia. And Alshon Jeffrey, I think, is their top receiver. That's my opinion. You can disagree if you like. Of course, they have younger answers. Of course, they have Jalen Reagor, who could potentially do it. Quez Watkins could potentially do it. He's a backup, I think. Or Greg Ward could potentially step into a slot role. But in my opinion, Alshon Jeffrey is not as amazing as he once was. When he's on the field and he's healthy, he actually plays pretty well. When he's not, he doesn't. And it's hard to really tell what you're going to get. I'm going to put Alshon at the top of the D tier because I have seen him take a little bit of a step back lately. And I hold Alshon Jeffrey to a higher standard than T.Y. Hilton, which is why Hilton got the C tier nod. Pittsburgh, again, you could argue between Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. Both belong in the B tier. Both are very talented. Denver, I think Courtland Sutton is a very easy pick here for the number one. You could argue Jerry Jeudy, if he takes more strides, could make a challenge, but right now it's Courtland Sutton, who I will put at the top of the C tier. Devontae Adams in Green Bay, that's an easy S tier pick. DeAndre Hopkins from Arizona, that's an easy S tier pick, I think right above Devontae Adams. Next we have Carolina. Now, Carolina's got a lot of answers as well at wide receiver. They've got Robbie Anderson, who just joining this year. You've got DJ Moore, who I think right now would actually be the top receiver, in my opinion. Of course, you can argue based on numbers, Robbie Anderson can make a challenge, but my pick is DJ Moore, and DJ Moore goes right in the B tier, right behind the Rams. The Raiders' top receiver. Now, the Raiders have actually had a lot of revolving door of wide receivers. And if I'm looking at their list, it's Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs is probably an easy pick here. And Ruggs, I think, has a very high ceiling. But right now, I'm going to put him in the D tier. Because even though his rookie season wasn't horrible, I think there's a lot more we can see from him that we haven't seen yet. Once we see it, I'll be more than happy to move him up. Washington, Terry McLaurin, probably the easiest and safest pick here. But Terry McLaurin, he's right behind the Houston Texans. Or actually, I'll put him above the Texans at the top of the F tier. Is McLaurin bad? No. He's actually pretty decent. He's very young. I think he's got a long future ahead of him. But right now, not nearly as good as the guys ahead of him. Stephon Diggs from the Bills, that's an A tier, right above Golladay, I think, in my opinion. You could even argue he's above Amari Cooper. But Stephon Diggs is very reliable. Very surprised Minnesota got rid of him and were able to replace him the way they did. But Diggs has not lost a touch or a step going over to Buffalo. Seattle, DK Metcalf takes the throne here from me. And I would actually say that Metcalf belongs. I'm going to actually move the Dolphins to the top of the C tier and put Seattle at the end of the B tier in their place. I think Metcalf is better than Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, to be honest. Jalen Waddle, again, he's a rookie. I can't really base it off that. But Metcalf, he has looked really good. And he's actually continued to look good after a second year last year. He still looks good. The Jets and New England. New England had a good offseason in terms of signing offensive weapons, but their team's receivers are in the F tier. probably right behind Washington, I'd say. Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, either one could make a case. If you really want to say N'Keal Harry, I wouldn't, but you can if you'd like. Neither are nearly the levels of the guys ahead of them. And New York as a whole, the Jets are a dumpster fire of a franchise. This team is awful. You could argue right now that Elijah Moore could be interesting down the stretch. I think right now Corey Davis is probably the top of that. Now, Corey Davis wasn't terrible in Tennessee. He wasn't. But that was with Ryan Tannehill. And if you're going to argue Corey Davis as the best receiver compared to the rest of this, I think Corey Davis will be at the very end of the D tier. And I'm being generous. I'm giving him a very generous tap there because I'm trying to put aside the dumpster fire that is the Jets' franchise front office right now and give Corey Davis a little bit more slack and put him at the end of the D tier. And that is what I have for you guys. Hope you enjoy the video. I'll see you in the next one.